right, we are live. Welcome, Ted. I'm so excited to have you with me today. I see you're at the beach. We just were talking about that. Well, in Florida, maybe not at the beach, but I bet you're going there today, right?
Well, truth be told, I was already there. So
Okay.
my buddy, who has his second bedroom labeled as Ted's room down here in Pompano Beach, is literally 3/10 of a mile from one of the nicest beaches in South Florida. So I was out there for a nice walk/run this morning, and now I'm back, and behind me is the Intercoastal Waterway. So I got a few business meetings, but in between, yes, I will probably be there at least twice today.
That's awesome. I'm jealous. It's a little overcast here in Tampa, so it's, kind of a yucky day. But I want to introduce you guys. I mean, not that you need an introduction, honestly, because most people I know in our space anyway knows who you are because you're kind of a legend. But I do want to kind of give some kudos to some of the things that you've accomplished in your career. I'm just going to read your bio and ad-lib a little bit here, but you're obviously...
Don't get carried away now, okay?
Okay, all right. I'll try not to. But you describe yourself as a social media strategist, keynote speaker, brand evangelist, and acting CMO of Brand Innovators. In March 2009, Ted started using and evangelizing the term ROI, return on a relationship, which, I was telling him earlier when we first got started that, we come from very similar philosophies as it relates to the relationship piece of this. And, much of what all of us in the social space that, leverage that message, Ted started this message. He started the return on relationship through, the hashtag Ron R. So if you don't know what that means, you need to, Google it or more specifically go over to Twitter and you'll find all kinds of conversations around it. But Ted left his position as Chief Social Marketing Officer of Collective Bias on August 31st, 2013, but he still remains the 5th largest shareholder there. So he still has an amazing impact, I'm sure, for Collective Bias. But, honestly, most of us in the social space or people even outside that know who Ted is, they know him for his enthusiastic, his energetic, and undeniably personal connection to people. And he goes out of his way, and I'll speak from personal experience around this, he goes out of his way to make that personal connection and the relationship piece of it. I mean, he walks his dog, eats his dog food, whatever verbiage you want to use. He is absolutely a relationship person. I really wanted to highlight before we kind of start picking his brain a little bit. He has 2 books, one of which is appropriately coined A Return on Relationship, which was released on January the 29th, 2013. But I really want to dig into a new book that he's getting ready to release. When is it going to be released specifically, Ted?
It's going to be officially announced this week. It
Okay.
really became available the end of December because it was put in by Brian Kramer's group Substantium, who published it for me.
Right.
To get it digitally published, and sometimes that can take as much as 30 days. And of course, over Christmas it took like 2 days. So it's available now on iTunes and Amazon, a few other places, but we'll be officially announcing it in the next day or two.
Awesome. And it is called How to Look People in the Eye Digitally, which, I mean, that's just a phenomenal title. And again, it goes back to that overarching message of, building out that relationship. And how do you do that? Because there are people on the other side of those computer screens, right, Ted?
No, absolutely. And you have to realize that there are people. You have to realize that you need to just use old-fashioned relationship building skills. This is not rocket science. I like to say that How to Look People in the Eye Digitally is my effort to share the thoughts of Dale Carnegie and how to win friends and influence people, but to take it more into the digital age and to use it in a way that makes sense to all of us as people, as companies, in ways to connect, call people by name, make things about them, really care about what you're talking about, and that shows through, and I think that really comes to authenticity. But quickly, I just want to say, very often I'm on these things. You don't often see me in a baseball cap, but I'm wearing one today because it's just a shout out to my daughter. She got accepted early admission to University of Pennsylvania.
Yay!
So I of course immediately ordered a hat, and have been wearing it. So I just wanted to give Nikki a shout out for all the hard work. You know, the stress levels that she had, it was a really important thing to her. She managed to do it while also having fun, participating in a lot of things that she enjoys, and I'm just real excited for her. You know, the stress is off now. Honey, enjoy senioritis. Enjoy the second half of that senior year, not having to worry about where you'll be.
Exactly. It is amazing too, you know, how much pressure is on kids today, right? To achieve and to get to the next level, and more specifically to take all those classes that are going to get you into that perfect college. It's almost, it's a little bit different than I think when we came along, but congratulations. I'd like to add my congratulations to Nikki for making that's an amazing accomplishment.
Well, thank you. I also just wanted to say one thing. I think most of that pressure comes from the parents.
Yes.
I don't think anything's changed. I don't think it comes from the colleges. I don't think it comes from the business world. It comes from the parents. And we're a helicopter generation, and we've got to let our kids learn how to learn, number one, and learn how to play. I mean, and learn how to problem solve. We're getting rid of things like playtime at school. We're getting rid of time on the outside where kids learn how to problem solve with each other. And you get offices full of young people that are very smart. Don't take anything away from these people. They got great ideas. They certainly want to work, but they don't know how to problem solve. I can't believe how many of them come to me and say she did this or she did that. And I'm like, really? Okay, go figure it out. But the problem is, their parents have been figuring it out for them for years, and they haven't allowed them to do it. So let's start giving the kids the reins, okay?
Well, and just to tag on to that, that's probably one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't let my kids fail more. I always try to, fix it. Let me see if I can fix it. It's that mama bear in me. You're like, well, let me figure it out. But you're right. Absolutely, they don't have that problem-solving capability so much anymore because they've never had to do it. So
and they don't play in big groups. They have play dates, and mom gets upset if more than one other kid comes over. How do you learn to work and maneuver in an office environment, in a people environment, in any kind of environment where there's more than one person, if you don't have a chance to learn those skills when you're young? And like you said, learn to fail, learn to figure it out. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but when we were young, mom just said go out and play, and there were 20 kids outside, and there were fights and there were problems, and unless it got really serious, we figured it out for ourselves.
Exactly. But even at the core of it, ties into exactly what we're talking about today. That's relationships, right? I mean,
that's relationship building. That's knowing how to talk to people. One of the things I like to say is, one of the reasons I tell companies and organizations not to put millennials in charge of certain parts of social. When I say certain parts, I'm talking about the relationship building side. Yeah. Because building relationships is no different than any other skill. And the reason I believe that boomers are best at social when they take it seriously and want to get involved, and why there's so many of us that really get the relationship side of things, is because we've had experience. We've been building relationships for so many years. Like I tell my younger daughter, who's a great driver, she still can't do what I do when she drives because she doesn't have the skills. She doesn't have the reaction time. If she pulls into an intersection, a car's barreling down on her, she's got to stop and think about what to do instead of just reacting. And it takes time to develop those skills. And it's the same with relationships. We learn how to diffuse situations. We learn how to inspire people, how to encourage people, how to lead people. It takes time. It takes time to know that it's important to call people by name, to know something about them, to mention something they're wearing, to do something to connect with them. And that's one of the reasons I think some of the best marketers in the world, the best CMOs in the world, are former good salespeople. Because salespeople are taught the most important skill is how to connect.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. I would like to. I don't want to take much thunder from the overarching message of your new book because I said this earlier. I said we come from the same place from the relationship side, and I think that's the core of true success on social media today is taking that time. And it is time. I mean, it's time consuming to build relationships on social.
It is time consuming.
But I think that in my opinion, the message that your new book has is even bigger than just the relationship piece. So, without taking much thunder from that message, how would you describe the core message of how to look people in the eye digitally? Oops. Give Ted just a minute to come back here. Well, we'll give him just a second. Hopefully he'll be back, but I really wanted him to, highlight the message behind, looking people in the eye digitally. Of course, the relationship side of social is so incredibly important, and I don't know anybody, honestly, that does it any better than Ted does. One of the things that I really appreciate about Ted, and I'll just talk about him a little bit while he's gone, is that if you've ever met him in person, or even if you haven't, but I'll just want to speak to meeting him in person. When you're physically in his presence, he has his undivided attention on you. You know that he makes eye contact. He uses your name. Some of these things that he's alluded to that are relationship building skill sets. He leverages in such an amazing way, and you know that you have his undivided attention. You've probably been in social settings before where you're talking to someone and you notice that they're kind of scanning the room, and you're thinking, well, are they trying to figure out who they're going to talk to next, or do they even care what I'm saying? It's that moment of doubt. But with Ted, you never. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about you while you were gone, Ted.
Okay, I apologize. I seem to have lost connection, so I'm back now.
Okay, well, I was just telling people the experience I had had. Some of the things you mentioned about the relationship building tools. Looking people in the eye and calling them by name. And I was sharing my experience with you from a personal meet standpoint. When you meet you or anybody meets you in person, you employ those skills, and and the person that you're speaking to feels that they're exclusively. Your attention is exclusively on them. So I was just giving you some kudos while I waited on you to get back. But we'll get back to the question.
Okay. So where were we? I'm sorry.
Basically, I wanted to get the kind of the theme behind the book, the new book that you have.
Right.
Looking the concept of looking people in the eye digitally.
Well, it's an extension. What I'm trying to do is everything I'm writing, at least in the next year or so, and since I wrote Return to Relationship, is kind of an extension of Return to Relationship. So in Return to Relationship, we talked a little bit about looking people in the eye digitally. So now we try to bring it out again into another short form book that extends it more into what it really means to a person in a business about building relationships, about looking at people, getting to know them. We all, at some point or another, were taught by somebody, whether it was our parents or our siblings or a mentor or a teacher, about when you talk to people, how to look at them. I mean, how many times did you see your teacher look at you and go, come here, Kim, look at me here. And what it means is pay attention to me. Whether it was on our first date and it was told, look at that person that you're sitting with, don't look at everybody else walking in the room, or how important it is to let people know that you're actually paying attention to them. And the book really just centers on that from a actual perspective. How do I do that hands-on while I'm participating in something digital and let people know that I know who they am? And then it takes it into other extensions on how does it help you build your reputation as a business, as a personal brand, as other things. So, like, for instance, I can't possibly be as reactive to tweets as I used to be. As your handle grows, as more people, I like to try to answer everybody. But the thing is that I make an effort to do it as much as I can every day, at least sporadically, so people know that if I don't answer them once, I'm going to answer them the next time, that if it isn't today, it'll be tomorrow. And that's about building a reputation. One of the lines I like to say is that a brand is what you do. A reputation is what people remember and share. And that's really important. So, you can say your brand is anything, but it's what people say about you. It's how people feel about you. And it's not easy. I mean, you know that. We go to whether it's an event or it's a PTA meeting or it's even in the supermarket, you bump into somebody and you have a lot of things on your mind. You have business meetings come up. You have things you have to get. You might have your child with you and you're worrying about where they are or what they're doing. But you want to try to give that person that you're with that attention that they know or they feel. And some of these people. There are some people that are just remarkable at it. You feel like you're the only person in the room.
And you're one of them.
Well, thank you. I hope so, because I try. I sometimes I think we're most critical of ourselves, and I sometimes don't feel I'm as successful at it as I'd like to be, because I know what's going on in my head, but you don't. It's like when we speak, and you get off the stage, and you think you were terrible, and people say, oh my God, that was amazing, because you know what you missed. They don't necessarily know that. So it's just really important to do that, and the ways to do that are old-fashioned relationship building and sales skills. Look at what the person's wearing, see how they're carrying themselves. If you're in their office, look what's on the walls. I mean, as a salesman, the first thing I was always taught was do whatever you can, show up an appointment early. Look around the office. Look around the neighborhood. See things there that can create conversation. If you can possibly get into the person's office before the meeting starts, so you can look at photos on the desk, diplomas on the wall, these are points of connection. And this also shows people that you care.
Yeah.
You know, that you have interest in them, that you're willing to discuss something that's important to them, not necessarily as important to you, but you're making it important to you.
Well, I always tell people as it relates to social, you wouldn't, rush up to somebody and say, hey, I've got, this amazing sale on my website. It's 20% off. Go, here's the web address. Go do it. If you meet them in a social setting. And yet so often they do that in social. And, the connectivity point for relationships, and even if you've met people for the very first time, you don't do things like that. You go through the process of finding some common ground. Right. And you're exactly right. Like, what is that common ground? If you're meeting somebody for the first time in an office setting, the observation skills are huge. But things like, if you're in a social setting, you're at a cocktail party or whatever, you introduce yourself, you try to come up with some common ground, whether it's kids or whether it's sports or whether it's the weather, whatever it is, you still start with the basics of building a conversation to find out if you're even there's some people that, you talk to that ultimately you don't have anything in common with, and you go your separate ways, right?
Right.
It's exactly the same thing on social media, don't you think?
Well, absolutely, and it goes beyond social media. It goes to all the things that we're doing in business. Let's talk about just like when you get a business card or when you reach out to somebody via social. I mean, I would have to wager a bet that 99% of the connections that people reach out to you via LinkedIn come with an automated one of their check boxes of, I think we have something in common, or, hi, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn, instead of a personal note. Why do they want to connect with you? How do they know you? Even when they meet you at a conference, you just get that automatic connection, and I tell people, don't do that. If I get your card at a conference, and believe me, I get hundreds of them, every single one of you I'm going to connect with individually. I'm going to write you a note to you. It's going to be addressed to you. It's going to have more than just some automatic thing. It's going to talk about where we met. If we had some kind of a specific conversation, it might mention something like that. But it's never going to be just an outright connection, except on Twitter, of course, where it's just a follow. But even there, if it's somebody that I met, what I'll do is in a LinkedIn request, I'll say, hey, just followed you on Twitter. Just to give them a heads up, because a lot of people don't look at those daily contacts or those daily connections that come in on Twitter. And same thing with Facebook. And, I, of course, will also never accept a LinkedIn request without a personal note back. So I will accept those generic requests, because I'm not going to say to you, you have to do what I do in order to connect with me. But I will never just check the box. I will write you a note back thanking you for reaching out to me, right, suggesting something and making some kind of a personal connection. And the only time I don't accept them is when I get them from college students, because then I think a lesson has to be taught. I mean, when I say a lesson, I mean it in a nice way. I don't mean I'm going to teach you a lesson. I mean, I write them back a note and I say, hey, listen, what you really want to do is when you're reaching out to somebody, especially somebody you don't know, write a personal note about why you want to connect with them, who you are, and then I write, looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, I think,
99% of the time, by the way, I never hear back.
Yeah, the tip that you just said, as it relates to LinkedIn specifically, I think yes, I can understand the concept in the context of the college student, but I would bet you that 95% of the connection requests that I get on LinkedIn are generic. They don't take the time. And, interestingly enough, and that kind of ties in some ways to my next question, as you know, my new book is about, the title of it is Will the Real You Stand Up? And it encourages businesses to become authentic marketers. And while I think that the authenticity is kind of a buzz phrase, and I don't want that term and the book to kind of be, that type of a book. And it's not, it seems silly to say, well, you got to be real. You just got to be you. Well, that sounds so ridiculous to some people, but I would just really love your take on what you think the word authentic means in the social context.
Well, what I have to tell you is that, look, I like the word authentic because, yes, as a buzzword, it has very little value. But as what the real meaning of the word is, it's like relationship. Relationship can be a buzzword as well. Human, unfortunately, be human can be a buzzword. So it's really about, and I love it because I talk a lot about companies being authentic, and I think what you're saying to them is it's time to stand up and really be who you are rather than trying to make believe you're something you're not. I mean, look, I like Pepsi. I like the company. Okay, but what I don't like is when they say we're here to do good for the world. No, you're here to sell us sugary stuff that tastes great. Do I rip you apart and say you're trying to kill us or you're caught? Like, no, I don't get into any of that stuff because you know what? You don't want to drink it, don't drink it. But if you want something that tastes really great, you know, or whether it's them or Coke, but don't what I say is stand up and say, hey, we're making a lot of money. So therefore, we want to do good with that money. We're not a company that's about good. We're a company that wants to do good because we're so successful. So to me, that's really being authentic. I mean, they're not a Burt's Bees. They didn't start out like a Ben and Jerry's. You know, they're a different kind of company. But if you're authentic about it, I think people accept it a lot more. And they say, yeah, this stuff is great. I mean, it's like alcohol. It's not there to cure your ills. But if people enjoy it, then say, hey, we're doing really great. So we want to help people. And, you know, I like to say that, you know, being authentic, don't just act it. You know, and it might seem obvious, and I think this is a quote I gave for your book. But authenticity for me is on the verge of becoming, like we said, just another buzzword, and not just in social media marketing, but in all marketing. And true authenticity, not just using the word often in our tweets and our posts. To me, that'll set your brand apart in the highly competitive market we have today. And what I love about your book is it takes you step by step through what it means to market your brand authentically. And to me, that's what it's all about. And I think, look, we talk a lot about millennials, and I like to say that they're people just like everybody else. They're really not that different. Okay, their drivers are the same. The reason they're different, it goes to that whole thing about, like, is it environment or is it genetics? It's not genetics. They are not genetically different from us. I mean, okay, if there are any geneticists on this call, they'll probably differ with that because I'm sure there's some little fraction of difference as we evolve, but they're not really. I mean, the years between us are nothing. It's their environment they're growing up in is different. So they're used to different things than we are. Their ability to communicate, their ability not to communicate. I mean, I don't know about you, but my teen daughters have made it really clear. Don't call me on the phone. I will not pick it up. I mean, how many of you guys call your kids and seconds later you get a text that says what with an exclamation point? It means they were there. They were available, but they're making it really clear to you, don't call me on the phone. I'm not going to communicate that way. And I talk a lot about the way I've learned to communicate with my daughters. And I'm a divorced dad. I have to fight to keep my daughters in my life. And it was really hard for me when they were tweens and teens to rebuild that relationship. And I learned a lot about connection. And it taught me a lot about friends, about family, and more about consumers. Because consumers are no different than our teenage girls. I have daughters, so I talk about girls. But, you know, they're sitting there when we talk going, la, 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 la. You know, they don't want to hear it. I mean, we did that to our parents, and consumers are doing the same to us, but you need to learn to communicate in the way they want to communicate, and that's a part of authenticity as well. And then, like I said, millennials, going back to them, they want honesty. They'd rather you say, yeah, we're making a lot of money, so guess what? We're going to do this. I mean, you know, so to me, that's important. Cause-related marketing is just that. It's related. It's not what you're about as a company. It's cause-related marketing because you're saying, let's attach ourselves to something that means something to people, and let's help out, and let's give away something, just like we all do as individuals when we get these requests, when we're trying to help out people. We know someone's in the hospital. Maybe we don't have money to give, but we give time. Companies can do that too.
I totally agree, and incidentally, I have two millennials, two boys, so I have the opposite of what you have, and you're exactly right. The way they communicate is through their phones, through text specifically. Don't pick up the phone and call them because you're not going to get them 9 times out of 10. And if I call, they know that I need to speak to them, so they won't answer initially. They'll usually call me back. And we've actually, and more specifically, speak to the point that you made that I thought was really important is communicate in the way that people want to be communicated with. Right. You know, millennials, like for us as a family, we have a family thread on text. So that we're all on it. If there's something going on that everybody needs to know about, as parents, that's the way we communicate with them. Right. Sometimes they don't communicate back, but they see it, right? And
that's most of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And so I think, as marketers and, stepping into that word authentic and, being authentic, I even going back to your Pepsi example is exactly dead on. Everybody thinks, well, as a entrepreneur or small business owner, that's a little bit different than, being big business, being a big brand. But it's not. The core of success, in my opinion, in business across the board is authenticity and showing up authentically in your messaging. Like you said with Pepsi, for example, if they just, were upfront about what they're all about, their brand would be much more relatable to their audience than if, they were just saying, I've got this amazing product and, being something that they're not. And I think that's a lesson across the board for any business owner, whether, again, you're a small business or, you're big brand. At the root of success for any business is, having a true message. What is your message all about, and how do you portray it? How do you show up, stand up, and, attract the right people to your brand, to your product, and your service? Do you agree with that?
I agree 100%, and you made a great point when you were talking, something I want to just go back to for a second. When you were talking about your boys, and you were talking about your family feed or the text that goes out to all of them, and how the point you made about the fact that they don't respond a lot of the time, but they see the messages, and that's the way it is with consumers. And I talk a lot about lurkers, and I talk a lot about how people participate, what I call vicariously, through others. So your sons might see you and your husband go back and forth with 5 different messages, that they're a part of that string. And they might not say a word, but they feel a part of that engagement because they watched you and your husband hash it out. Well, the boys should come home at 6. Well, it's okay if they come home at 7. Now, they're not saying a word, but they're watching it happen. And consumers do this all the time. When they watch you and I have a conversation or they see, JetBlue likes to say if one person's complaining, there's another 150 complaining, at least. Therefore, we want to do this communication publicly because we can solve a lot of other people's issues by solving one person's issues. So recognize as businesses that a lot of authenticity comes into that. You don't necessarily have to talk to Kim. But Kim is really participating with you and building that authenticity and that relationship and that connection because she's watching the conversations you're having with others. And when I look you in the eye digitally and I call you by name, that person automatically assumes I'm going to do the same for them. And they get a lot of that fall-off effect.
Yeah, I say that all the time too, Ted, that relationships are built both directly and indirectly. Meaning that, directly you may be engaging with people and holding a direct conversation with them, in the example of, sometimes my kids talk to me and sometimes they don't. But more often than not, the indirect relationships are going to be way more exponentially than the direct relationships of people actually engaging with you.
Way more, yes.
Way more. And this has been such a great conversation. We've had so many things. I've still got 1,000, well, not 1,000, but I still have 3 or 4 more questions. But I know your time's valuable, and I don't want to take up too much of it. But one of the things that I think of when I think of you immediately is your socks. Can you share a little bit about, I know the back end story myself, but just a little bit about that and how it helps you show up authentically and relate to people with the ultimate goal, of course. I'm sure that you have a story somewhere that your socks have created profit for you and your business, right?
Every single day, and they create. Look, return on investment is everywhere. And let's make something clear that when I talk about return on relationship, I'm not saying that's instead of return on investment. I'm saying it enhances return on investment. So, in personal relationships, we have a return on investment. You like somebody, they do something back for you, you become friends, you support each other, you build a community. I like to say that a network gives you reach, but a community gives you power. And what happened with socks was that, look, I like funky socks. And when I tell people, I never sat in a room and said, hey, how can we get some attention around me? Let's come up with an idea. That's not the way it happened. And I tell this to companies for their brands, large Fortune 500 companies, and to people for their personal brands. Absorb what's going on around you. See what's happening. Do things, as you said, that are authentic. So authentic for me is I like funky socks. John Andrews, my ex-business partner at Collective Bias, loved funky socks. So we would wear them all the time. We'd compete with each other. And I used to speak at a lot of blogging conferences. And mom bloggers just started taking notice of my socks and making a little comment when I was on stage. And then so afterwards, a blogger named Sandy Jenny, whose Twitter handle is Organizer Sandy, is a photographer, and she's very, very good, and she takes pictures at all the different conferences. And I was sitting with my feet up on the table with my socks clearly showing. She came over and took a picture and said, do you mind if I publish this? I said, no. And very quickly it took on a life of its own. Bloggers started tweeting it, retweeting it, asking me what I was wearing later. The next day they wanted to know what I was wearing. The conference ended, and for a week afterwards, every day they're saying, so what socks is Ted wearing today? So I realized, like I say to people, try different things, and when something takes hold, drive a truck through it. So I started realizing people wanted to hear about my socks. And now it's become a thing. I've been doing this for probably over 3.5 years. I publish my socks close to every day. If I go 2 or 3 days without, people reach out and go, where's Ted? And then I tie it into what I'm doing. I tie it into when I fly on planes. It's always with my laptop in front of it because I have certain stickers on there that are important to me. Be good to people from Chris Wittenberg, which I just love. The hashtag I've always used is just be nice. And then I got to tell you, I get more play from CEOs and CMOs of Fortune 500 companies around my socks and around things I publish about my daughters than I do around, I mean, it leads them to my marketing, but they don't walk up and go, hey, Ted, return on relationship, that's brilliant. They go, hey, man, loved your socks yesterday. Can we get a shot? I had a Wall Street senior executive pull me over in the lobby of a building about 6 months ago. He's with 6 guys suited up in navy blue suits, ties, on their way to close a merger. He sees me in the lobby, and he says, oh, my God, Ted Rubin. He puts out his foot. He says, we got to get a photo. And these guys are going, what are you doing? We got to get up. He's like, he's leaving. I've got to get this done. And really what it's about connection. It's about giving people something to rally around, to talk about, to share with you. I get socks in the mail every day. I created a hashtag hub, Ted Psaki. I was talking to Sue Zimmerman from the Instagram girl. And I had been using Joel.com and said, hey, why don't you use Psaki, pound Psaki, hashtag Psaki, like a selfie. But then I realized a lot of people were using that. So to create something where all of my photos are and people can see more people that want to come in on that, I started using Ted Psaki. And I got to tell you, when people say to me, when are you going to stop doing that? I say, when people stop caring. Yeah. I mean, it's that simple. And everywhere I go, every conference I go to, people walk up to me, they walk by me, they want to see what I'm wearing, and it's a door opener. I mean, people walk by me that I might have had to grab by the collar, and instead they're stopping, they're asking me for socks, and then a conversation ensues. Yeah. So it's like any other kind of marketing or content marketing where it gives you the opportunity to start a conversation, and it makes it easy for people. Because anybody can talk about that. They don't have to act like they're smart. They don't have to think that they can ask you an intelligent question or worry about what they're going to say and that you might not think it's intelligent or that it's a good opener. They come up and it opens the door. So it allows people to very easily look me in the eye digitally.
Yeah. I think, speaking to that again, I tell people all the time, people will connect with you on a personal level before they're going to connect with you around your product or service.
Right.
So, and that goes back to the big thing, and the whole reason we're having this conversation is, how do you show up, be authentic, and still prosper in social media? And I think it, again, at the root of it comes back to the personal element. Being personable, being relatable, and, just showcasing that you're a human being and that, people will ultimately know, like, and trust you, so they'll buy from you.
Absolutely. Do for others without expectation of anything directly in return. And you will get that stuff in return. I like to say that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. And, and I think that means a lot for business. It means a lot for personal. This is an age of commoditization. I mean, it's the age of influence, where anybody can build a brand, affect change, make a difference, without ever leaving their bedroom. So how do you set yourself apart? Yes. I mean, especially businesses. So many products are becoming commodities. And if you're going to do it all about price, if it's going to be all about discounting, it's a race to the bottom. But if you add value, I mean, how many of us, there was a time when I was fighting for my daughters and every nickel counted. I mean, I was spending 2 to 3 times in legal fees what my personal note was. I mean, it was, and for what I was earning, I was going hugely into debt. I would save a nickel by going to 3 different supermarkets, but I started going to a supermarket down the block of the house, a specialty place. Why? They made me feel good when I came in. I never had to wait. If there's one extra person online, they open another aisle. They make it easy for you to get in and out. They make you feel good when you're there. So what do? You shop there, even though you might not be able to afford that extra dime, because actually you can, because in the feel good they're giving you, in the time they're saving you, they've given you that value in return. And to me, that's what it's all about. And I think that's what you write about in your book, and that you help people do. So, look, get Kim's book, read it, learn how to be authentic. I really mean that. There's a lot of value there, and I hope that. Hashtag be you.
I have my hashtag sign. Every time I think of Sue, I think of the hashtag signs. But I totally agree with you. I am so appreciative that you come on and shared. You've been amazing. Thank you. Appreciate you so much, Ted. And I hope you have a great rest of the day at the beach.
Thank you, everybody. Make it a great day. It's really up to you.
All right. Thanks. Take care.